Hello there, and thanks for choosing this content. Just a quick disclaimer to say that all views in this video are personal and belong entirely and only to the person saying them. They do not reflect the views, stance, or policy of any other person, organization, employer, or entity. And with that being said, let's go to the video.
Hello, I'm Leo, and you're watching the Cloud Therapist channel.
Hello and welcome. My name is Richard Simon. I am Cloud Therapist. Is OpenStack dead? That is the question we are going to be asking today. Maybe we already know the answer, but that is what we're going to be talking about. And I have a great special guest for you, Leo. Leo is an old colleague of mine from my IBM days. He's also a dear friend, and I very much admire and respect him. So let's say hello to Leo, and let's ask him to do an intro. Leo, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you, Richard. Thank you for having me. And, it's been ages since we've met at one of the blue chip companies together and did a few crazy projects indeed. And we both kind of moved on and moved away from that specific environment.
We did.
Me recently, or for the past 5 or 6 years, I started my own cloud business, to be honest, because that was what I felt was right at the time and still think it's the way to go. And basically I started Kubernetes back in 2018, 2019 as my escape route from my last gig that I did for a major corporation.
Right.
And never looked back, really.
Right, cool, excellent. So you're kind of doing your own cloud, which is fantastic. And so you're really the perfect guest for this conversation, because we are talking about the cloud operating system today in the guise of OpenStack. Now, a little bit of anecdote for you guys. If you actually look at some of the earlier videos on my channel, you'll notice that they're all titled the Cloud Therapists. So that's with a plural, not singular. And the reason for that is because Leo was actually supposed to be one of my partners on this channel. What happened, Leo? You never turned up.
What happened back then? I think I was busy with something
else. You were building your cloud or something.
I don't know what it was, but
blockchain.
Basically,
you were doing blockchain.
Yeah, blockchain, and then and then you started the Cloud Therapists, and I never joined really. So somehow blockchain days is blockchain. I think is similar in the grave like OpenStack is. No, I'm sorry, I'm not spoiling that.
Yeah, no, that's a different talk. We might do that one as well. So yes, Leo was there when I kind of gave the channel its name. I think we were talking on WhatsApp and we exchanged some ideas, and I said, hey, let's call ourselves the Cloud Therapists. So that is the anecdote. That's what actually happened at the beginning. That's why you'll see those early videos will actually say Cloud Therapists in plural, not singular. Okay, so let's kick off on the conversation. So I appreciate you coming on, Leo, to do this. And obviously it's a kind of a bit of a somber mood because something has died, something has passed away, and I'm not sure if it actually ever. I'm not sure if it actually ever lived a full life. To be honest with you, it's kind of
it was half
before its time,
all the time anyway. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so let's dive into a little bit of history first. So obviously OpenStack was started, I think, by Rackspace and NASA. I think if anybody else was involved, apologies if I left out any other names. But yeah, I don't know where. I mean, where is Rackspace these days? They're they're a partner to all the hyperscalers. I wonder why that is. What happened there? I don't know. But anyway, so around, I think I picked up on it. I can't remember exactly the time, but the momentum sort of around OpenStack was back in 2015, 2016, maybe. And that's kind of when I really started to kind of pick up on it. I was working for SUSE at the time. I think I attended the OpenStack Summit in Barcelona or something. I think that was kind of at the heyday of OpenStack. Do you remember when you kind of started first hearing about it, Leo?
It must have been around 2015-ish as well. And my first encounter with OpenStack would have been in automotive and telcos, basically building the big infrastructure, the private cloud inside their thing, which was, I think it all was a costly mistake to do, but that's been back then. And Richard, actually one of the reasons, and I will not mention the blockchain anymore at all, when I've seen the OpenStack, where it is in 2016, 2017, I thought, okay, if cloud goes this direction, cloud is dead in a couple of years. So I better go and, try to find me something else for reinvent my career. So I went all into blockchain, and then Kubernetes happened, and everything went to a different direction and started to have a different dynamics. So
so I think I guess we kind of probably heard about it around the same time. And like I said, I think that was the height of sort of the buzz and the hype around OpenStack. So obviously at this point, a number of vendors, so, I mean, obviously the project I think had started a few years before. I can't remember when. I'll try and include some info in the description of the video later to kind of just give you the history and background. But the open source vendors really kind of jumped on board, around that time. So the likes of Red Hat, SUSE, Canonical, even HP had a version. Actually, do you know what? As we were just preparing for the call, I seem to remember even VMware having something around that. I can't remember what was it. It wasn't VMware Cloud. It was, what was it called? I can't remember what it was called now.
I can't remember the name as with anything with VMware.
VMware
probably not worth remembering it at all anyway.
Let's not take
no pun intended. Let's not go there.
And then let's not take up any brain cells with that one. Absolutely. Let's not waste them. So basically it was kind of that sort of small cloud service providers, all kind of basing their stuff on OpenStack. Again, that was the movement around that time, as you quite rightly mentioned. So everybody seemed to kind of have their own sort of distribution, of OpenStack. And it was all going rather well, at least for a while anyway, on the surface, until obviously Kubernetes or orchestration and containers happened. And when sort of containers came in and then orchestration with Kubernetes, that kind of hit the mainstream barely 18 months later. So around 2017, 2018, I moved on from SUSE to Mirantis, and Mirantis was another vendor that had OpenStack as well. And then,
I remember that period of your life.
Yes. Yes. Let's not go into too much detail about that. And then in 2018, I actually joined Heptio, which was one of the sort of startups in the Kubernetes space. So they had the Heptio Kubernetes service, or HKS. So really, I think it's kind of got strangled quite quickly.
They got acquired, didn't they?
Heptio got acquired by VMware. Yes, and I was a VMware employee for all of 2 weeks. Or 10 days,
Blimey, you did last the whole 10 days.
For that long, yes, but that was enough for me. Okay, I did. I signed up everything, and then I waived my Heptio shares and whatever. I couldn't. It was no way I was going to wait for them to vest after 3 years or something. I just gave up. But anyway, Kubernetes really, I guess, killed it. That sort of whole concept of cloud native started coming in a lot more. Let's not forget that Kubernetes was kind of probably the first of the CNCF projects. In fact, it was actually, because it was, CNCF was created around Kubernetes. There is another talk I'm doing about Kubernetes, this being Kubernetes, which is the 10th year anniversary of Kubernetes. So do look out for that on the channel as well. Try and provide some info on that as and when that comes out. But yeah, so how did you kind of what's your the take for me was OpenStack is kind of still spending its time around virtualization, but now we've got Kubernetes and pods and containers, kind of moving towards containerization. What was kind of your view of that at the time, Leo? I'm really interested in kind of knowing how were you sort of comparing those two, and what was your sort of thought process around those?
I remember drawing one picture on a whiteboard at a customer somewhere. I don't know where it was exactly, back in 2010, 2011. And I said, containerized, or I didn't probably use the word containerized, but virtualized applications are about to come, because we cannot afford over the long run to waste so much resources using virtualization of the entire system when all you need is this much. Okay. So when Docker happened, I immediately jumped on and started playing around with that. And when I've seen, okay, there's still this OpenStack, what would people use it for? So some clever clocks came up with the idea that, oh, maybe on the back of OpenStack, we can build the OpenShift, or we will not mention any specific distributions of or versions of Kubernetes, right?
Yeah.
So why the heck would you want to do that? Virtualization on top of containerization orchestration. So layer on top of a layer. Okay.
Exactly.
So when Kubernetes / Docker happened, I thought, okay, OpenStack is dead. Why would anyone even want to have a look at that? But I think the important bit is there's still those 4 to 6 year cycles in technology refreshes. So probably the reason why we have this talk right now is we really see now, okay, who the heck would want to do a technology refresh on their old OpenStack rather than build Kubernetes platform on bare metal, maybe.
Yes, and I think the distinction I was starting to make there was that you were kind of expecting, or people were expecting you to run OpenStack as the infrastructure, if you like, and then Kubernetes as your sort of workload cluster, if you like, and then run your applications inside of pods and containers. And that, for me, when you consider that, like I said, there were distributions of Kubernetes, just like OpenStack had distributions. People running it on Ubuntu. We had, a SLES version. Miranta's had a Kubernetes version. Red Hat has their own, and so on. So all the vendors were running it, off the operating system. So I'm now thinking, well, yes, if I want it in my own data center, I can run it on top of vSphere if I really want to, or I can just run it in bare metal, or I can run it in the cloud, in actually a public cloud like AWS or something. But I don't really need OpenStack to do any of that. Kubernetes as a cluster can install, on top of whatever you want. Right?
2024, hello.
Yeah.
You go to Ubuntu, you grab micro KAs, you do click, 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 and you have one almost production class system node. So you do 2 or 3 others, and bang, you have a production environment, which is what we use internally in our own data center. I wouldn't, as a business owner in the cloud business, I cannot afford to waste valuable IT resources to put such a pain in the ass, excuse my French, overhead in the form of OpenStack today, if ever at all in the past.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, and yes, I think I started making that distinction. Well, I probably stayed quiet for a while because the employers I was working for were very much still passionate about OpenStack. I was thinking, oh, this is not going to work. But anyway, so we kind of got to that point, and then OpenStack itself. So we kind of scratched the surface a little bit there. It is as we said, this is a kind of an entire cloud ecosystem. So that sort of mantra, that sort of type of or concept is really we've moved away from that quite a lot in the last few years, especially with the advent of a lot of those services in the public cloud. So we can get a lot of those things that we were doing with, or could have done with OpenStack. You know, we do that in the public cloud now. And it's really, you know, it's not really a kind of a runtime or a cluster or even a hypervisor, only a hypervisor. There's lots of kind of modules and services that it requires. So all the usual suspects are there. I'll try and maybe provide a list of all the services like Neutron, Nova, Ironic, you know, Cinder, Swift, Heat, Glance, Horizon, Keystone, I think was the security one or something. And then some really funny ones recently, which I did look up the list recently to just kind of see where they are on those. And these are all different projects, by the way. These are all different projects managed and, you know, developed by different people. Some of the slightly funny ones recently. Freezer is one of the new modules. Yeah, I see. That was the reaction I wanted to get. That's why I didn't tell you the names. Cyborg is another one.
All right.
And
what does that one do?
Yeah, that's a good question. I just read the name. I didn't really go into the description.
Freezer, I can imagine. You need to freeze your application and never use them ever again. Then
yes. I think that's the backup and restore one. I think I got that far with the reading, but then I gave up. And then the last one, very excitingly called Blazor. And those are just the three of the recent ones that I picked up on. There's a whole OpenStack governance website, so I'll put some links in the description for you guys to have.
Is it always, or why is it always, when people involved in those kinds of projects start throwing in these funny names, it sort of indicates that maybe the whole thing is at the end of its life cycle and being phased out?
We'll come to that. I've got a point on that, and that's a very good point that you've made there. So we'll circle back on that one, definitely. Yeah, and then the other issues, of course, so that's kind of the maybe the sort of the complexity aspect of it, and then the other parts that a lot of people kind of have talked about throughout, really, and also through my recent conversation with Microsoft Copilot as well. I had a quick chat with Copilot about OpenStack. I just kind of wanted to get Copilot's opinion. Yeah, gonna raise one eyebrow like that. So the conversation there was, I mean, it was around scaling and upgrading, OpenStack. So although I think Copilot tried to remain neutral and complementary as much as it could, it did agree with all the
Of course, given the training data and the owners.
Yeah, exactly. So it said something along the lines in the conversation. It said, yes, OpenStack and Kubernetes are trying to kind of solve similar issues. Maybe not really convinced with that one. It did point out that Neutron, which is the networking module, is probably the most complex and difficult to actually scale. Difficult part of OpenStack that actually you can scale. And then I started asking questions about, well, why do I need OpenStack when Kubernetes kind of run on bare metal, which is what we were saying earlier? And the response there was, good question, from Copilot. So it kind of gave some reasons. So it said things like, well, it's an abstraction layer. It's, for scalability, flexibility, consistency. And I was like, yeah, Kubernetes. And so I was like listing Kubernetes for all of those things.
If you look at it from the other end, what are the 1 or 2 operating systems that you need to virtualize instead of run in a container or in as an abstraction layer, these Linux containers, LXC, and then this kind of stuff in Ubuntu. And so far, as long as people need to stick with Windows servers in a way, they need some sort of a virtualization and orchestration on top of that, which is where I guess the OpenStack is still alive, probably exclusively in that environment. Other than that, what do you need it for in the Linux world?
Yeah, exactly. And that's a good question. And I think I think for me, it's just, what we were saying earlier, it's just too many virtualization and abstraction layers. It's just not necessary. When you consider you have to run it, and then you have to run, you have to use KVM or something like that to actually create the virtual machines. Then you run your Kubernetes, and then you run your applications in the containers. I mean,
and then
absolutely unnecessary.
The main point that killed it for me, I was involved in one of the projects in the telco space where, for some reason, historically, they did run OpenShift on OpenStack.
Yeah.
And the one thing that was killing it completely was you run network virtualization over network virtualization, and then connect these two worlds with yet another network virtualization to make it happen. And you just don't want to do that. So as soon as it was possible, they were migrating the old setup to basically a bare metal type of solution.
Exactly.
Which only made sense.
Yeah. So the final word on history, this is the circling back point. What really made me dislike that whole movement is really when the OpenStack Foundation, as it was called at that point, and now it's called the Open Software Foundation or something, started giving each release a name. As you said, that was the epitome of, I don't know, boredom, overconfidence, arrogance, even. I don't know.
All of it, probably.
Or all of the above. Yeah. I don't know. When you've got that much money flowing in from all the sponsoring vendors and so on, you can indulge yourself, start indulging on, completely useless things and calling each release with a name, which was just, anyway. So, yeah, I think that really made me definitely dislike, and I'm being polite here, with my wording, made me dislike OpenStack.
Go on, don't hold yourself back.
No, I won't hold back. We'll do that in the outtakes. Unfortunately, Kubernetes has started doing the same thing. They've started naming.
So 5 years from now, Richard, I don't know. 5 years from now.
Maybe even less than that. We might be having another video called "Is Kubernetes
Dead?"
Yeah, so let's see how long that lasts, right? So it's had 10 years as a run. So let's see what happens. Okay, so let's move on to present day, which is probably a more bleak picture than before. So vendors mostly have moved away from OpenStack. We can see that. It's pretty much, as you said, retreated into the telco space. I don't think it have actually left the telco space. I think the majority of customers, certainly, if you look at Mirantis's sort of customer base and the organizations that we engaged with, or the vendors that the enterprises we engaged with, were mostly in that sort of telco, manufacturing, aerospace, as you said, maybe automotive sort of space. So I don't think it's really ever made, like I said, a sort of an explosion onto the mainstream. I think it's kind of always been in that type of space. So it was always kind of strong because, especially in telco, because of things like network function virtualization, or NFV. Those were the kind of the virtualization of those kind of very hardcore, telco equipment. So for the first time, telcos, didn't have to swap cables and install all these big racks and whatever anymore. Once that kind of infrastructure was done, you could, apply this software abstraction layer on top, and then be able to virtualize your services and maybe offer them, in a kind of a more targeted sort of approach, I guess, than sort of in a bulk way. And you could certainly, do multi-tenancy better and various other type of functionalities. So that's what NFV brought in on top of that. And I don't know why NFV just kind of chose OpenStack as the primary sort of base to do its stuff. I didn't realize I didn't see why.
The question is, was there anything better at that point in time, or did you have many options, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
You certainly do have now, but especially telco is like, there's certain curve that it follows before the technology adoption happens because of all the, I don't want to say legacy stuff, but legacy technology that needs to be around for a certain period of time.
Yeah.
So probably that's why.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, quite rightly, I think even that sort of core space is now, being threatened because a lot of those NFV, type of functions are now actually being containerized. In fact, I picked up on a announcement that AWS made last year, which was around something called the Telco Network Builder and Managed Telco Networks. Those were the announcements that they made. So this was kind of bringing that type of functionality that was potentially exclusively on, on OpenStack. Now you can actually do that in a public cloud. So you could potentially build a whole, telco network in AWS in a public cloud if that's what you want to do.
It's gonna cost you, but
it's going to cost it's going to cost an arm and a leg. But hey, you can charge as just as much as well, right? So, okay. So yeah, I don't know about you. I mean, I've not heard people sort of mention OpenStack. I don't know if anybody's contemplating, these days using OpenStack. Certainly not in their data center, and you wouldn't really want to necessarily build your own cloud with it, or indeed anywhere else.
I mean, I wouldn't.
Yeah, you wouldn't.
I wouldn't.
Yeah,
I wouldn't.
Okay.
And probably.
And has anybody else mentioned it to you?
No.
No.
Not that I am aware or remember.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
And I guess if you're going to run Kubernetes, you might as well just run it on vSphere in your own data center because you've got a lot of vSphere already. If that's what you really want to do. And, and they have Tanzu. So you can always just run it as Tanzu. If you don't want to do like OpenShift or something else, or Kubernetes or one of the other distributions, you can just use Tanzu, I guess. And that'd be a good starting point if you want to get into, containers and orchestration. And as we said, we don't really need any other layers in between. There's no need for any other layers. So, I think that's kind of the difficulty I think that OpenStack kind of finds itself in, or has found itself in since the advent of things like Kubernetes and Docker. Obviously, the other thing is that it's, OpenStack is we talked a little bit about scalability and so on. But I want to get your take on it sort of being notoriously hard to manage, patch, and upgrade as well. What do you think of that?
Scalability.
Well, we talked about scalability.
Manageability.
Manageability.
Availability. It's just not there at all. I mean, when it runs, it runs. As soon as you need to touch it and update one component, you better plan for an outage for a weekend and then pray for the best and see if on Monday you're back online with everything. That's been the telcos, some of the telcos story for the past few years when they still had it. And, why would you want to, as someone responsible for IT operations in any large organization that deals with 10,000s, 100,000s, millions of customers, why would you want to do this to yourself? You would want to take that crap out of the equation as soon as you can. Probably I'm pushing it a little bit too far, but patching,
not from my experience. Not from my experience
of OpenStack. When you looked at all the components, interdependencies, and everything that the nitty-gritty details, how you hold that together in the long run, I don't know.
Yeah, and I, if you guys look up my sort of profile on LinkedIn, you'll see that I did work for a couple of open source vendors, which I did mention earlier on in this discussion. And I can assure you that the upgrades for OpenStack, the distributions we had, were terribly complicated. And that's after a lot of Chef and Puppet sort of automations. This Chef and Puppet were kind of the thing, the automation tools, my favorite automation tools at the time. So I think any OpenShift customers out there would probably recognize that, because I know, having been to OpenShift summits, I've heard the same things from OpenShift customers as well. But again, patching and upgrading were a complete nightmare. And there were those times, yes, absolutely, when the whole cluster we had to take the whole cluster down over a weekend or something, or out of hours or something like that. Hey, if you are enjoying the content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That would really help me out. Thank you. And the other aspect of it, I don't know how you feel about my experience was, we needed really either an army of people to kind of, maintain OpenStack, or, at least a few people that kind of lived and breathed it and had real, hardcore sort of practical experience, with OpenStack, and kind of lived and breathed it, for at least for a few years in order to kind of keep those, types of clusters going.
It was, I don't know, the whole mentality of it was like, remember these big blue systems, right? That people started at very early age, learning them, maintaining them, and lived them with them until the retirement. Now, how the technology evolves now so fast, everything is 5 to 10 years cycles. So 2015, 2025, we say OpenStack is dead. And who would invest nowadays such an effort to get all the nitty-gritty details to run OpenStack when you know that it's behind its popularity curve, usability and stuff like that? And true, the overhead of people, qualified people that you need to have in place, and to just, never do anything to them that would make them leave, because if they would leave, you would be in tatters basically sooner or later.
Yes.
Just why would you want to maintain such complex environment that is heavily dependent on specific knowledge, easily can break stuff? And people who were involved in that probably wouldn't enjoy that for the rest of their lives, working with that too. I mean, would you want to be an OpenStack engineer from now until, I don't know, for the next 20 years? I mean, I wouldn't.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. one simple word. Yeah, they were, those people were a high priestly order. It was like trying to learn from them. It was like, we're not worthy. So, it was, they really, I think they really played on that, and they knew kind of how important I think they were to either the vendors, if they were working for a vendor, or the company that was running OpenStack. Okay, so let's move on to vendors in this space. So we've already mentioned a few, but let's kind of scratch the surface a little bit more here and see what we find. So so when I was at SUSE, SUSE acquired HP's Helion, which was their sort of OpenStack distribution. I don't know if you remember that one. I don't think many people even know that HP had a OpenStack distribution, but that was the solution that they had. And then I think the idea with SUSE was, and hopefully I don't think I'm breaking any NDAs here by saying that they were, the roadmap was to really try and integrate the two. In fact, I think we actually spoke to a lot of customers in regards to that, because we inherited the HP Helion sort of customers, and the idea was to integrate the two code bases eventually. I don't know if they ever did or not. I bailed out at that point, so shortly after that. But clearly the whole thing, sort of eventually failed, because SUSE pulled out, or they stopped producing, the end life their OpenStack distribution after a few years. So clearly, whatever they were doing at that point, however they were doing it with OpenStack, it just wasn't working really. And I think it was a struggle along the way.
I mean, imagine merging the two probably disparate code bases.
Yeah.
Even though it's the same thing.
Yes.
No. You don't want to do that.
You don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Yes. So I like I said, the last thing I heard was that basically,
I haven't heard about the HP one, to be honest, much.
HP Helion.
I think I may have heard the name, but probably was below the radar of the few other ones.
I just remembered, wasn't the VMware one called vCloud?
Yes. Yeah, VMware vCloud. Yes,
that's the one. It's all coming back to me. My gray cells are working again.
Yeah.
So
VMware vCloud.
Yeah, so VMware vCloud was their distribution, and then you had. So I think this was that whole period where everybody said we can do our own cloud and we can compete with Amazon and Microsoft and and Google and people like that. And so you had VMware doing vCloud, you had HP doing Helion, and a few other sort of local players as well. I think we're all trying to kind of muscle in on that sort of area. And obviously Rackspace was doing it for some time already.
It reminded me of my, I had the blue days, that's where we met, and then I had the red days straight after that.
Yes.
I don't know if that company still uses the red as the logo with the white letters. Yeah, and I wouldn't mention their name because of certain post office scandal in the UK, but
yes.
But
for that one, check out one of my other videos. I'll include that.
VMware vCloud was one of the bases for their solution, their take on how the cloud could look like, and it was an absolute, how to say it diplomatically? No, I can't. It just didn't. It just couldn't work out when you look just at the architecture of it and at the scale of it, and how and where the product was or wasn't ready as such.
Yeah, and that got sold off as well. You know that vCloud got sold off to somebody. I can't remember who it got sold off to, but that got sold off to somebody. Okay, so that was kind of the SUSE sort of attempt, if you like. Red Hat had an OpenStack's distribution. In fact, they still do. However, Red Hat's recent announcement, this is back in last year, 2023. They've now, what have they done now? They've now put the OpenStack services on top of OpenShift. So you're now running Nova and all those Neutron, Ironic, and whatever as either as KVM virtual machines in OpenShift, which you can do because it has Rev, I think, built in, or as containers running in the Kubernetes, which is in OpenShift, which again you can do. That really on two fronts. First point is it beggars belief that you're doing that they're actually doing that. And then the second point is I can see why they're doing it, because I think OpenStack going forward is, or that their distribution, I think essentially is end of life. So this is the way to provide
extended support. So we stick it on top of OpenShift now, so that you have still a possibility to run it for the time being before we shelve it.
Yes. So it says, and the statement, this is Red Hat. So I'm quoting Red Hat here. It says, this blending of technologies requires careful planning. No, Sherlock.
Blending of technology.
Was the guy who wrote this, was the person who wrote this, was he kind of being a little bit, I don't know, what was he being here? Is he trying to drop hints?
I mean, come on. Imagine you're sitting at Red Hat and you have to put this announcement out, and you still need to adhere to the corporate standards, right, of communication. So in a corporate speak, I can translate it perfectly in my head.
Yeah. Oh, and I just remembered, vCloud was sold to OVH.
Okay. What did they do with that? Probably killed it. So I've never heard about it.
Just like every other acquisition, either gets merged in or gets killed off after a couple of years. So that was announced last year. And then a further quote, and again, I'm quoting from Red Hat. Red Hat OpenStack Platform 17.1, which is the release that now sits on top of OpenShift and this weird thing, is the last version of the product to use the classic form factor of the control plane. So there you go. So I think that is definitely ready for sunset. And I'm betting it will probably enter limited support and end of life fairly soon, or that announcement will follow fairly soon.
So 5 years cycle, something like that.
Something like that.
We're done.
Something like that. Yeah. Okay.
And
so
the rest is history.
Yes, and the rest is very much history. And that's Red Hat's sort of contribution. Now, I had a conversation with somebody on LinkedIn who was actually I think a solution architect at Red Hat, and I, bluntly posed that question and said, "Look, you guys are doing this because you really want to get out of the OpenStack thing." And he was, he denied it or whatever. I said, "Oh, this is kind of an upgrade path for our customers." And I said, "Okay, you can stick to that. I'll stick to my understanding of how vendors do things, having worked for them, throughout my career." So, but yeah, anyway, so that's kind of where Red Hat is. So now you can run OpenStack forever, if that's what you really want, on top of OpenShift. As long as it's on top of OpenShift, you can run it forever. You can run it forever. Now, don't even ask me to think about that, what that stack looks like running on top of OpenShift. I don't even want to go there anymore. I haven't got a clue how that's going to work.
If you love over engineering and complexity,
yes, then go ahead. Feel free.
And
be my guest.
Yeah. Let us know how it goes. Maybe a good topic for the. If there's anyone out
write
there
a technical
doing
paper
that,
on it, yeah.
maybe just invite them for this discussion next time. And I would love to. Just one question: why the heck would you want to do it?
Why would you want to do that? Exactly. And since the Red Hat is now a part of IBM, they can write a red book on it. There you go. I'll read the red book. Do you remember those, Leo?
Red books are no longer what they used to be.
I know them.
And I did write, 7 of them between 2000 to 2005 on obscure things that no longer exist. So yes, you can write one on OpenStack, and that will be the death certificate for it going forward, definitely.
There you go. Right. Okay, so the other vendor, so we're kind of sticking to some of the vendors and where they are at the moment. So Mirantis is the other vendor.
That's the interesting one.
Yeah, so they have something called MOSK. That's MOSK, or Mirantis OpenStack for Kubernetes. Mirantis OpenStack for Kubernetes. So MOSK.
Mirantis OpenStack for Kubernetes.
Yes.
All right.
So
they're basically going the same direction as Red Hat.
Exactly.
Trying to stick it on top of it for the Okay.
Yeah. All hands abandon ship, as they say, as well at Mirantis, just like Red Hat.
I love the name though. It's like, if you want to do this, go and pray, and maybe it will work out somehow.
Maybe
that's
it will
your
work
only.
out. Maybe it won't. Yeah, we'll see. So that's kind of their. And I think that was then. Well, I know that that's out because they have been plugging that quite a lot, and that was announced, I think, earlier this year. So they've kind of gone the Red Hat route, so it seemed, as well. And then the recent thing that they did was they were saying that because of the whole Broadcom and VMware situation, they were pushing customers. I've seen adverts from Mirantis saying, "Hey, why don't you come to MOSK and use Mirantis OpenStack for Kubernetes instead of VMware?" I don't know.
Well,
so it was kind of I don't know. OpenStack for me seemed to be for these vendors, it kind of seemed to be alive and then dead, and now it's kind of trying to keep it alive again. I don't know. I think it's flogging a dead horse, if you ask me. But there you go. It's what is it called? Necromancy, I think. That's the That's what it is. Something like that. Okay, yeah, I wouldn't really kind of go with that strategy. I mean, you might as well go to Nutanix or something if you're going to do that. Or hey, come to T-Systems. T-Systems has, we host vSphere and VCF for customers. So if you really want to get out and get a good deal, you can actually come to T-Systems. We do that. But anyway, that's strategy there. The quietest one, I think, out of the bunch has been Canonical. What do you think about Canonical, Leo? Have you heard anything about kind of what they've been up to and what they've been doing?
I don't remember, to be honest. So when you went on their website 5 years ago, there would be this OpenStack from Canonical type of adverts and go and try that and whatever and download and give it a go and support us and blah blah blah. This typical hype thing. It's not there anymore, I guess, or I haven't seen that.
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, I've
sort of disappeared. I mean, with their focus on containerization and also with their focus on, and they've been quite vocal in having the distribution for the small factor ARM devices, which I used to be quite passionate about as well.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
To that environment, something like OpenStack wouldn't fit. So I think their focus went to different areas, and they're being unusually quiet on anything. I haven't, but if you wouldn't bring this up, I wouldn't anymore ever remember that Canonical was too much involved in OpenStack. So they probably, I don't know if they killed it. I can only comment from my observations.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is real life information, because I just asked Copilot, and Copilot says, yes, Canonical is still actively selling OpenStack. They continue to offer Charmed OpenStack, which is an enterprise cloud platform with flexible technology choices, blah, 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 blah. And then they have a smaller version, small scale cloud environments with a project called Sunbeam. And then I asked, okay, so is Charmed OpenStack running on top of Kubernetes? And they said, yes. Canonical is from... So they're doing exactly the same thing as everybody else, basically. So there you go. There's your answer.
Right. So, yeah, literally all the major vendors.
They're all doing the same thing.
Pave their way to sunset it at some point.
Yes.
Giving the customers a way how to run it for the time being before it's no longer required.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's just extended life. That's all it is. They're just keeping it alive for now because they have whatever, 2 customers each or something, still running OpenStack.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so we were talking about VMware by Broadcom and sort of other similar scenarios. I really doubt that anybody can be persuaded to go from that situation into OpenStack. I think that's almost an impossibility these days. And then other sort of people online or the press, the IT press, have kind of been talking about the return of private clouds, making private clouds making a comeback, or words to that effect. And I think that's somewhere between pure conjecture and utter nonsense, I think, for that to be making a comeback.
No, I can't see that.
Yes,
no.
Exactly.
I mean, you can be a small cloud vendor serving your community customer base that you have. You can try to build things not necessarily better, but with better support and responsiveness and ability to speak to a human in your cloud journey. But just to build your own cloud based on whatever OpenStack or OpenShift with OpenStack on top of it to stick with that mantra of OpenStack being the cloud operating system, more or less. I can't see that.
Yeah.
I can't see that. And it's, you know, it's not just the overhead. I think that kind of was a transitionary technology for all those customers who really had the mindset stuck in the siloed mentality where oh, we will not run anything in the cloud. Now, when you mentioned that you can now build the whole telco network and the whole telco ecosystem out there in the public cloud, I mean, it's only a matter of time when people will jump on that. Whether it will be more cost effective, whether it will tick all the boxes, I don't know. I would rather wish for a smaller vendor would take that and offer it as a niche solution as a public cloud somewhere, and utilizing the scalability into the big tech public cloud providers. Why not? But the return of private clouds in your own data center, you know, what was the name? Fujitsu Dynamic Blocks for vCloud, because it was based in the vCloud director from VMware. That era of 2011 to 2013, 2014, I wish it would never go back because it was a total mess. And I don't see a possibility that we will ever go back 10 years earlier from where we are now.
I don't think this. I mean, I don't think OpenStack can be saved. Even, you know, they used to have a biannual conference, so they had a conference twice a year, and that's now down to local meetups only of it. So it kind of went from 2 to 1, and then now to local meetups.
So the last people standing still trying to socialize and exchange information about, oh, we have that one remaining customer, oh, we have this another one from there and there. Right.
Local meetups only. There you go. And like we said, the whole thing is kind of, you know, outdated. We don't really want a cloud operating system anymore. We you know, let alone even another hypervisor. You know, and this has been tried by others as well, like Mesos and what have you. You know, in that space, it's not like OpenStack is the only one. And enterprises really want to leave that space. They want to, you know, they want to optimize their cloud environments. They don't want to add more complexity, more layers, more abstractions, and things like that to their environment. Because now we're in a different era. We're in the sort of era of, you know, FinOps and cost management, and, you know, public cloud allegedly, you know, being more expensive and things like that. It's only my view of that is only because you haven't really architected your environment very well, and you're not, you know, as cloud native as you should be. But yeah, I don't really see that sort of happening. And you know, if you can kind of afford to stay with vSphere, then just stay with vSphere. You know, you can kind of even do containers with it, right? With Tanzu. So if you can afford to do that, just stay with vSphere, you know, for now, and experiment with Tanzu. Get into Tanzu. Do, you know, it's a full-fledged, you know, Kubernetes distribution. It's HKS, you know, I can vouch for it. Yeah, because that's what happened when they acquired Heptio. They turned HKS into Tanzu. So I can vouch for it. It was a very, you know, very stable production.
You see, so one of the acquisitions that didn't kill the technology completely, but evolved it into something.
Yes.
I don't know if it's that something that you wish it would end up. But
it wasn't. No, I didn't want it to end up there, but there you go. Okay, yeah. So a great deal of lessons, I think, to, you know, to be learned, I think, by this whole sort of OpenStack thing, so OpenStack movement, and even as we said earlier about, you know, sort of Kubernetes getting maybe a little bit, you know, blasé or overconfident. So again, we'll see. Like I said, I've done a panel discussion around the 10th anniversary of Kubernetes, so do look out for that when that comes out on the channel. Okay, so let's do a few conclusions. So was OpenStack a romantic notion? Was it kind of
notion?
kind of a, oh, it'd be great if we could have this utopia of a cloud operating system?
I mean, it looked great in the slide deck.
Yeah, the stacks and layers and the module looked really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, complicated.
You had that pyramid. You started at the bottom, and I can see that. I remember all those. Yeah, they were quite popular. In the real life, I think it was more pain to build it, deploy it, maintain it, use it, and therefore, dear OpenStack, when your time comes, rest in peace.
Yeah. Indeed. I think we can definitely declare OpenStack dead, considering how much we're spending on public cloud. So in fiscal 2024, the number was $805 billion, I think, was spent on purely on public cloud. So yeah, with all those complexities, with the handful of vendors all sort of, repositioning it to be kind of easy to be sort of killed off. I think that's what's going to happen to it sooner or later. And those services it was uniquely providing have now moved on as well. So they're all containerized and you can run them in a public cloud if you want. So yes, I think we can quite safely declare OpenStack dead. Okay. Right. So I think we've come to the end of the conversation. We could probably go on talking for ages and taking further snipes at all the stuff that we talked about. But I think that's good enough for this particular talk.
Good enough for OpenStack. I think
yes, I think so.
When you Richard, when you sent me the topic, I was like, what does he want to talk about? Is OpenStack dead?
How
Yes,
is he going to even fill 10 minutes? Yeah, how is he going to fill like even a 10-minute talk about OpenStack being dead? Okay, we've nearly done an hour on it, so I think we've comprehensively covered it, and we've
from all angles and
all angles, all facets, everything, all POVs, everything, and I think we've we've provided some very good evidence as well. So, Leo, thank you ever so much for your input. I really enjoyed having you on. It's been fun. It's been well overdue, I think, considering your roots and your connections with the Cloud Therapist channel. So I do appreciate you.
Considering, I should have been one of the Cloud Therapists. Yeah.
I know, it should have been in there. Yeah, but
thank you for having me. I enjoyed that thoroughly, and I hope that we do soon another one.
Absolutely. And I know you've got your own plans. So we'll try and provide some of the details about Leo, what he's up to at the moment, what he's up to, or what he will be up to in the future as well in the description of the video. So do check out for that. Any YouTube channels and stuff like that he puts on, do go and have a visit. Do subscribe, please. I think it's quite cool. He puts out some kind of similar stuff as well, which is very good and very thought-provoking videos and ideas as well. Thank you guys for watching, and hopefully you had some fun on this particular talk, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you for watching, and please do subscribe to this channel. Thank you.